You're watching Behind the Headlines. I'm Pacchia. As Congress and the White House continue to look for ways to formulate policy on protecting critical infrastructure from cybersecurity threats, they are finding no shortage of special interests trying to chime in with their policy preferences. Joining me now to clue us into the emerging lobby for cybersecurity policy, we have David Ransom, partner at McDermott Will Emery. He joins us from Washington, D.C. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Lee. Thanks for inviting me.
Sure thing. So there were something like 513 filings by consultants and companies weighing in on how Congress should approach cybersecurity issues in 2012. That's a major increase from prior years. What, in your opinion, is spurring this tremendous interest all of a sudden?
I think what's spurring the interest, Lee, is the fact that the cybersecurity issue cuts across such a wide range of industries. So it affects everything from critical infrastructure like dams, the electrical grid, the transportation system, financial services, telecommunications. So you have this collection, really a broad spectrum, if you will, of industries that are potentially affected by cybersecurity legislation, as well as the recent executive order that was signed by the president.
Is it at a point where professional service providers like law firms are starting to build practice centers around this topic? What does the current cybersecurity lobbying landscape look like?
I think that lobbying landscape looks similar, if you will, to other issues like tax reform, immigration reform, health care reform when that was debated in the Congress. And that is, given, like I said, the broad sweep of the industries that are affected by cybersecurity, you have industries wanting to go to Congress and educate members and staff. Because they're really worried about unintended consequences, potential effects on their businesses, on their industries of cybersecurity legislation, and already the executive order signed by the president. So I think that's really what's driving the increased lobbying registrations on cybersecurity, is just simply the fact that this is something that is continuing to be debated in the Congress. Nothing happened in the 112th Congress. In my personal opinion, it's unlikely. There's unlikely to be legislation enacted in the 113th Congress. So I really think that the reason you're seeing all these lobbying registrations on this issue is just the breadth of the industries that are affected, and the fact that cybersecurity itself means many things to different industries. For example, for some, it's whether or not they're construed as critical infrastructure. For other interest groups, it's data security and privacy issues, civil liberty issues, if you will. What's done when there's hacking that goes on, and personal information is hacked. So I think that's really what's driving all of this interest in cybersecurity. And let me add one other thing. I think there's a great deal of controversy over this. But I've told my clients that they need to get in and talk to members of Congress, talk to staff, educate them on the issues that are of interest to them, because God forbid if something does happen, for example, if you take down the electrical grid on the East Coast or something of that magnitude, cyber attack of that magnitude, my personal view is, and I was on the Hill on 9/11, is you're likely to see then a bipartisan consensus in the Congress in very short order enacting legislation that is likely to include regulation.
What's the next big tension point in this debate, in your opinion?
I think the big tension point will be how the executive order signed by the president is implemented. The federal government, the Department of Homeland Security, is charged with identifying critical infrastructure. There's been a concern by many industries that this was simply a backdoor attempt for the federal government to regulate private sector entities. And so I think the implementation of the executive order is a key point, Lee. And I think there will continue to be activity in the Congress on various cybersecurity measures.
How does the government define critical infrastructure in this day and age? I would imagine that's an intricate dance.
Yeah, it is an intricate dance, and the executive order does have a specific set of language that defines critical infrastructure that relates to a catastrophic effect, either nationally or regionally, that affects the country's national security or economic security. But it affects, as I mentioned at the outset, many different industries. For example, is a medical facility in a major metropolitan area critical infrastructure? I would think probably yes. And I don't know that medical providers necessarily are thinking of themselves in that way, and whether or not they need to do various things per the executive order and the implementation of the executive order, as I mentioned. So I think that's likely how things are going to play out. But again, in the back of my mind anyway, and there's all kinds of chatter, whether it is our news stories, if you will, about attacks on financial service companies, about potential espionage that's directed by foreign governments. So this issue, cybersecurity, in my judgment, covers a lot of different areas, from the espionage to hackers who simply want to destroy or disrupt private sector entities.
It's certainly an interesting space, and I think it's going to become a lot busier for professional service providers, much like you folks over at McDermott Will Emery. David, thank you so much for your time today, sir. Really interesting.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you.
That's David Ransom from the law firm McDermott Will Emery. If you'd like to learn more about the cases and issues we just discussed, be sure to go check out our offerings on BloombergLaw.com and also on the Bloomberg Terminal. You can see more of our videos on YouTube, and you can follow our updates on Twitter. I'm Pacchia. Thanks for watching.